Previously on Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, Sakura was indeed the spy and half the students turned on her. I mean, it was like 3, but it's still half. She comes up with a foolproof plan to get everyone back on her side by taking herself out.
Okay, maybe it's not completely foolproof, but you get the idea.
Meanwhile, Kyoko does some digging and finds out that there might be another student living there. A very dangerous one. Because what would Danganronpa be without a little sense of looming danger? Anyway, we'll find out more about this danger in the next chapter of this f***ed up copy of Toy Story that some guy randomly sold me on the street. Anyway, let's get into it. And here's where things start to get really interesting. Chapter 5, 100 Mile Dash, Pain of a Junk Food Junkie, wins the award for the most ridiculous title in the game. It opens up with everyone, and this time I really mean everyone, in the dining hall. They waste no time and go and investigate the new area, the 5th floor. There's a dojo and a garden. Kyoko's in the dojo, and upon seeing her, Makoto flashes back to that startling revelation at the end of the last chapter. Now, I appreciate a well-done plot twist. The whole 16th student thing was a pretty good one. However, the writers thought it was good too. Nothing wrong with liking your own work, but they repeat the same cutscene 5 times. I wish I was exaggerating. I went back through and counted how many times that they flash back to that scene, and it's 5 times. And I know I already told you how many times they flash back to it, but if they can flash back to that scene 5 times, then I can repeat my own dialogue as many times as I want. Makoto tries to talk to Kyoko about it again, but she doesn't say anything because they're being watched. So Makoto decides to take a look around the dojo and finds several targets, some lockers, a straw post used for sword practice, samurai armor, and a cherry tree in full bloom even though the room is completely enclosed. I question the logical implications of this, but a guy also got turned into butter earlier, so I'm not holding my breath for a straight answer on this. Speaking of which, the garden. According to Hiro, it's got real vegetation growing, even though the room is also completely enclosed. There's also a huge flower which Monokuma named the Monokuma flower. Creative. Supposedly it was created by the ultimate botanist who has passed away due to the tragedy. Also, the flower can eat anything, including plastic, so it's very environmentally friendly, and people. So it's very environmentally friendly. There's also a chicken coop with real live chickens. Hiro counts 5 in there and claims that the number 5 is a good omen. I mean, considering that we're also in Chapter 5, I'm all for some good omens at this point. There's also a control panel which Monokuma says is for the sprinklers that are set to go off every morning at 7:30. And that the control panel is locked so no one can change it. There's also a shed with a variety of tools and farming equipment. Though Makoto seems a little thrown off that there's a pickaxe in there that has the words Crazy Diamond engraved on it. There's 3 classrooms as well. The first one's fine, the second one's also fine, and the third one...
What the f***?
White chalk outlines, blood everywhere, cryptic messages, everything to make you unsettled is all here, baby. And the worst part? Monokuma drops by and lets us know that he didn't do anything to the room. He left it exactly the way it was. Byakuya notices that all the blood is dry and seems to have changed color, meaning that whatever happened here happened a long time ago. After that disturbing room, Makoto heads to the biolab, only to discover it's locked. So Makoto heads back to the dining hall to discuss everything with everyone. Byakuya brings up the murder classroom, which Kyoko wonders if that's what the tragedy was centered around. Which if that was the case, that explains why Hope's Peak had to shut down last year. But Makoto is wondering the same questions that I'm wondering. For an event to be labeled the biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history, which was centered around a school that they were supposed to go to, by the way, how is it that none of our characters know anything about this event? Anyway, there's the locked biolab, which everyone decides not to worry about for the time being. Hina checked the windows, and yet again, all of them are bolted. She also noticed that there's no more stairs on the 5th floor, meaning that we've reached the top of the school. Or at least this area of the school, because it's quite large. Hiro shares everything he found in the garden, including the man-eating plant, the sprinklers, and the chicken coop. When he starts talking about the shed, Makoto remembers a pickaxe with Crazy Diamond engraved on it and remembers that that phrase was also printed on Mondo's jacket. Toko says she was in one of the classrooms and guess what she found? No! Byakuya believes it's a survival knife of sorts and they agree to let Makoto keep it because they trust him, even though he's uncomfortable with the idea. After revealing all their new discoveries, Byakuya now turns his attention to Kyoko, specifically who she really is. As much as I hate to admit it, Byakuya makes a good point here. Kyoko has never revealed to anyone what her ultimate talent is, and I mean, that is a bit suspicious. Especially in a situation like this. Kyoko doesn't tell them anyway, because she doesn't remember. In fact, she's lost her memory completely. Byakuya, of course, doesn't believe her. He threatens to take her rune key, which, if you remember the regulations, you cannot sleep anywhere other than the dormitories. So that's basically giving her until nighttime to live. Kyoko walks up to Byakuya and just hands him her key. Because of this, Hiro and Hina start to believe that she's telling the truth. Kyoko then leaves the dining hall, leaving behind, yet again, a flustered Byakuya, which is oh so satisfying. Then Hina screams because an angry Monokuma shows up, accusing one of them of being a thief because they stole something precious to him. And then he leaves. At this point, I'm just assuming it's going to come up later. Byakuya thinks it has something to do with Kyoko because she would be the only one willing to steal something from Monokuma. But before they can explore that idea further, the nighttime alarm rings. Makoto heads to bed, but not before putting the knife in his desk drawer. He falls asleep, but it doesn't last long as Kyoko rings his doorbell in the middle of the night and asks him to meet her in the dressing room. Once there, Kyoko explains that she in fact did steal an item from Monokuma, a key. She found it in the previously locked headmaster's room. The lock was broken though thanks to Sakura, who did it before she passed. Kyoko also explains that she noticed the room's lock was broken after the class trial, but she couldn't go in because Monokuma would have seen her. The whole incident the night where she told Makoto to meet up at the data center was actually a way to distract Monokuma so she could sneak in. The headmaster's room was also where she found out about Mukuro, the 16th student. And apparently this Mukuro girl is very dangerous. So much so that Kyoko thinks that she could be the mastermind instead of the headmaster. Kyoko wants Makoto to distract Monokuma again so that she can find out what this key leads to. Makoto of course raises his objections, but Kyoko assures him he'd be fine because she believes that the mastermind cannot monitor them and control Monokuma at the same time. But seeing how worried he still is, she also assures him that whether or not something happens to them, they'll be able to gain something. Kyoko also hands Makoto a letter telling him only to open it if something happens to her. They leave the bathhouse and Makoto instantly gets to work by calling for Monokuma. Monokuma appears and is immediately suspicious of Makoto and Kyoko in the bathhouse, but for other reasons. Makoto keeps stalling him by asking him what was stolen, to which he responds a key and something else. Something secret. Then Monokuma leaves. Makoto hopes that was long enough and goes to bed. The next morning, Makoto heads to the dining hall where Byakuya berates him for being late. Ironic since he never showed up until this chapter started. Makoto explains that he's not feeling good. Everyone's there except for Kyoko. Everyone starts wondering where she is when Monokuma shows up, because he doesn't know either. Makoto sees that as a good sign that the plan went well the previous night. Or Monokuma's just lying about not knowing where Kyoko is and she's probably dead. I'm just saying I wouldn't put it past him at this point. Later that day, Makoto starts feeling sluggish and getting chills. That night, he slips into a full-blown fever and goes to bed early. He starts having a weird dream where he hears himself talking about staying here for hope or something like that. Look, it's a fever dream, I wouldn't read too much into it. He then wakes up and... Okay, maybe we should calm down just a little! Makoto screams out and everything goes black. But then... Kyoko shows up and, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on. Makoto's still quite delirious from his fever, so he can't quite grasp what's going on either. But he ends up passing out again, so I guess we won't know for a little bit. The next morning, Makoto wakes up with his fever completely broken. He remembers last night, unsure of whether all that really happened or if it really was just a fever dream. I mean, considering how everything in this game has gone so far, I would imagine it would be hard to distinguish between the two. However, his confusion about that's all cleared up when he looks in his desk drawer and finds the knife he put in there missing and realizing that was the knife that the masked man was holding. But this raises even more questions for him though, like what the hell happened? Instead of musing about it by himself, he heads to the dining hall. He only finds Hina in there. She seems relieved to see him because everyone went to get him, but he never answered. Something had happened because everyone was staying up all night. Hina leads him to the gym and finds everyone except for Kyoko gathered around a broken Monokuma. Byakuya explains that he found Monokuma in the gym just standing there. Menacingly! Yes, again, I've already used that joke, but they flashed back 5 times. He wasn't reacting to anything or talking, so Byakuya decided to just disassemble him. He gathered everyone around and got to work. They found out that Monokuma is very advanced, especially for a remote-controlled toy. Since Monokuma had no indication that he was alive, they believed that something unexpected happened to the mastermind. Which is weird since the morning announcement played as usual. But Byakuya believes that that's a recording. But there's not enough time for that because Hiro found something on Monokuma.
Pray tell, Hiro, what did you find?
You know?
Everyone for themselves!
Just kidding. There's a motion sensor, but it appears to be off. After that alarming incident, everyone decides to break into the headmaster's room to find out more about the mastermind since they've gone AWOL. They head there and it turns out the room's locked now, so Byakuya sends Toko to go get the pickaxe from the tool shed in the garden. She comes back, but without the pickaxe. And also his genocide Jill. And news that she found a corpse in the garden.
So does she mean like a real corpse, or...? Oh, okay.
So yeah, that masked guy that appeared in Makoto's room is now dead. Byakuya checks the body and notices that the blood is a bright red.
Yeah, that's pretty bright red.
And that the blood is still wet, so it happened not too long ago. Hina takes a look at the body and thinks it's most likely a girl.
I say most likely because of what happened that one time.
Genocide Jill decides to take off the mask to see who it is, but then... Well, I guess we're not finding out any more about the body. Makoto quickly puts out the fire and everyone just stands in shock from the explosion. Except for Genocide Jill, who went flying off somewhere. Don't worry, she's fine. Everyone starts guessing who it could be and it comes down to 2 choices. Kyoko or the mastermind. Byakuya thinks it could be the mastermind because that would explain Monokuma, and for once I hope he's right. Hiro remembers that the headmaster was a man in his late 30s. But then Makoto decides to tell everyone what Kyoko told him about Mukuro. Of course, everyone is bewildered by the news. Makoto starts to search the charred body, but before he can get a good look at it, he finds a key. Byakuya sends Makoto off to find what room the key will open. Turns out it opens the data center. He goes and gets everyone else, and they head in. Inside, they find a whole bunch of monitors displaying all the feeds from every single surveillance camera. Toko notices that they have recorded all of their moves and is wondering how she can sign up for Byakuya's OnlyFans. This room further confirms Byakuya's theory that it's the mastermind who's dead because the body had the key that leads here. Everyone's excited that the mastermind is dead, but Makoto isn't quite fully convinced. For example, how did the mastermind die? It obviously wasn't natural in any way. This is kind of bothering Byakuya as well, and he wants to thoroughly check the room to see if there's any clue as to why everything happened. There's some high-performance PCs that seem to be monitoring the network, and may have been monitoring Alter Ego as well. There is a door with Monokuma's picture on it, but it's locked. Not even the key that they used to get in the data center unlocks it. Hiro notices a blank TV screen with a TV antenna next to it. Hiro gets it working and...
That would honestly be pretty terrifying to see.
Hiro's kind of weirded out because the TV antenna is the only thing hooked into the TV, so why is it showing the surveillance feed?
I don't have any answers, do you? Hold on a damn minute.
So, yeah, Monokuma's not dead. Honestly, I didn't think he was, but yeah. He's here! We gotta get back to the killing game now. But not before he lets us in on a little secret. The TV antenna is working right, because all the surveillance footage is being broadcast all over the world in order to showcase true despair. When asked about the legality of the whole thing, Monokuma just brushes it off, hands him the next Monokuma file, and shoves him back into the killing game. Whoopee! Everyone pretty much starts to break down at this point. Byakuya now switches tones and thinks that it's Kyoko that's dead now since Monokuma's still alive. Makoto is not having any of this and begins to look for clues as to who is the murderer
And the victim.
The Monokuma file this time states, due to the explosion, the victim's identity is unknown. They were, however, dead before the blast. The victim had been stabbed a single time with a knife which went completely through the body. They had also been struck in the head with an object that was about as thick as a metal pipe. The body was covered with other wounds, but these were at least several days old. Makoto goes to the garden and investigates the body more thoroughly. He notices fake nails and a tattoo on the victim's right hand. He can't quite make out the tattoo, but it looks like it could be a picture of a dog. He looks at the burnt jacket and notices that the upper half is wet because that's where the fire from the explosion was going. Though Makoto does seem a little suspicious that the lower half wasn't burnt, especially with an explosion like that. Makoto finds the knife that was in the body over to the side, again likely due to the explosion. Upon closer inspection of the knife, he realizes that it's the same knife that the masked man was using, and in turn, the same one that was in Makoto's dress drawer. Makoto starts to get paranoid that he was the one who may have stabbed this unknown person. He then finds some fragments around the body. Turns out that's pieces of the bomb that went off. Makoto knows this because it looks like the same one that was attached to the Monokuma doll. But before he follows up on that, Hina asks him about the body before the explosion. Well, there's what we already know, mask, white jacket, knife. But then Makoto remembers the blood stain. Yeah, think about it. If the knife went completely through the body, wouldn't there be some blood on the ground as well? Makoto checks the sprinkler system and remembers that it goes off at 7:30 a.m. and that it can't be changed. So the murder would most likely have taken place after that time. Makoto then looks in the chicken coop and notices one missing. Hiro was in the garden last night and remembers there being 5. How's that good omen turning out for you? Byakuya then tells Makoto his alibi. Byakuya found Hiro in the garden when he found out about Monokuma, and they together went to Toko and Hina's rooms to go get them. As we know, they were in the gym the entire night. They even went to the bathroom in pairs, so their alibis are pretty tight. And if it is Kyoko there, that leaves Makoto the only one without an alibi. At least in everyone else's eyes.
Oh great, we're going through this again.
Makoto checks the tool shed again and finds it mostly untouched, except there is a tarp laying in the middle of the floor. On one side it's wet with mud and grime, but the other side's completely clean and dry. After looking in the tool shed, Makoto decides to go check out Kyoko's room, but since Byakuya has the key, and since he suspects Makoto as of right now, Byakuya decides to go with him. The only thing they find there, though, looks to be a strange key. Byakuya believes that it goes to one of the lockers in the dojo. Makoto then remembers the letter that Kyoko gave him. Makoto opens it and just finds "under the sheets" written on there. Makoto checks Kyoko's bed sheets and finds a school registry document pertaining to Mukuro Ikusaba. Makoto realizes that this was the mysterious thing that Monokuma was referring to earlier when he was being distracted. He looks at the profile and finds out she was the ultimate soldier. She knew how to use numerous weapons and was very cunning for her age. One year, while she and her family were vacationing in Europe, she disappeared. 3 years later, she turned up in Japan alone. She revealed that she joined a mercenary group known as Fenrir during the time she was gone. Byakuya recognizes the name of the group. He explains that they're essentially battle-crazed warmongers, but they're very efficient in their work. Monokuma then shows up and finds out they have the document, though he doesn't blame them or Kyoko. He blames Sakura. But he's frustrated that he can't do anything about her since she's, well, dead. Byakuya asks him if these regulations are really so unforgivable. Monokuma explains that this, utopia is built on organization and order. So much so that even he has to follow the rules because he doesn't want people complaining about unfairness and all that. He then decides to just blurt out that the mastermind is in fact one of the participants of the killing game. He also explains that there are indeed 16 participants. The reason why he's telling us all this? The audience watching. He didn't want to get a bunch of hate mail and complaints due to confusion.
Or at least that's what he wants us to think. I don't know anymore.
Then Monokuma leaves. Byakuya is currently trying to figure out Monokuma's trap. Byakuya believes that Mukuro is not the killer in this situation because if Mukuro was the mastermind, why would Monokuma reveal info that would make everyone suspect her? After trying to wrap their heads around Monokuma's mind games, Makoto and Byakuya head to the dojo to test out that key. What they find in the locker are 10 titanium arrows and a wadded up ball of duct tape with a blood stain on it. Byakuya then suggests going to the archive again to look up info about Fenrir. They find the file, but it's all in French. Thankfully, Byakuya knows French. But of course, in true Byakuya fashion, he rubs it in our faces. According to the file, Fenrir was an elite fighting group based out of the Middle East. They based their name off of the Norse wolf of Ragnarok. They claimed that every singular member of their group was worth an entire company of soldiers. They always engaged in direct combat, and they were involved in many highly classified military battles and operations. But some time ago, they just stopped. There were unconfirmed reports that key members were taken out. Some people believe it was to keep everything secret, or there was some kind of internal tension within the group. Byakuya also tells Makoto that members of Fenrir would get a tattoo of said wolf somewhere on their body. Makoto instantly remembers the tattoo on the corpse, but before he says anything, the class trial bell rings. Byakuya and Makoto make their way to the elevator where everyone else is waiting for them. However, 10 minutes pass and Monokuma still hasn't shown up yet. Monokuma then pops up saying that he's still waiting for everyone to arrive.
What do you mean you're waiting? Makoto's here, Byakuya's here, Hina's here, Hiro's here, Kyoko's here, Toko's here. Hold on a damn minute.
So I guess Kyoko's not the victim. As everyone's still happy that Kyoko's still alive, Byakuya of course decides to spoil the fun, saying this might not be good for us. But without explaining himself, he just turns and gets on the elevator. Everyone else follows suit except for Makoto and Kyoko. Makoto asks Kyoko where she was, and she says that she was investigating the second floor of the dorms using that key of Monokuma's, which unlocks any lock in the school. Apparently, the second floor of the dorms is a very convenient place to investigate because there's no cameras or monitors there. So she was able to avoid Monokuma, but she also missed the body announcement. She heard the class trial announcement and briefly checked the crime scene out, which is why she took such a long time to get there. They then hop into the elevator with everyone else and descend toward the trial room. The trial gets off to a rocky start because Hiro, being the absolute idiot that he is convinced that Kyoko is the victim and that the Kyoko that's standing right there is the ghost. After finally convincing him otherwise, they explain about how Muguro joined Fenrir and that the tattoo on the back of her hand is the Fenrir logo. Monokuma then confirms that the body is indeed Muguro. Everyone's a bit confused because they believe that Mukuro was the mastermind and the ultimate despair by that logic, but they're still holding a class trial. Byakuya believes that Mukuro was never the mastermind at all. Things start to get heated when they start debating as to whether or not Kyoko's information was false or not, but Monokuma stops them. Because figuring out who done it is more important right now. And he reminds us that we're having a class trial because someone in the student body killed Mukuro. Everyone then turns to Makoto and Kyoko as they're the only ones without a solid alibi. They explain to Kyoko about their time in the gym at night as well. Makoto explains that it couldn't have been him because he fell asleep before nighttime, then woke up and met Hina in the dining hall at 7:30 in the morning. Well, 7:30 was the time the sprinklers went off and the body they discovered wasn't wet. Well, okay, eventually the top half was, but that was because it was on fire and Makoto put it out, but the bottom half was still dry. So that means Kyoko's the only one without an alibi. Kyoko denies that she did it, but Byakuya isn't having it. In fact, he actually lays out a plausible motive that Kyoko could have. She believed Mukuro was the mastermind.
I mean, that would be a pretty plausible motive.
Kyoko's response is to go after Makoto.
Whoa, 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 hey!
Kyoko, what the hell are you doing? Alright, fine. Let's hear your explanation.
Kyoko found that tarp in the shed we found earlier and that it was used to keep the body dry, hence why it was dirty only on one side. But it wouldn't make sense because the tarp on the clean side, the one that was touching the body, should have also been dirty because of the blood on the body. But Kyoko believes that the blood was camouflaged to conceal the actual crime. But whoever the killer was didn't use blood packs from the nurse's office. They used one of the chickens. And as it turns out, there was only blood on the coat, which the killer may have put on the body when they removed the tarp.
But since they're accusing Makoto here, he wouldn't have had enough time to do that between when he woke up and when they discovered the body.
Well, there was a brief period of time where Makoto didn't go to the gym right away, so that kinda solidifies Kyoko's theory. At least in everyone else's eyes. Also add the fact that the knife that was given to Makoto was stuck in the body. But Makoto realizes that the knife wasn't what killed Mukuro, because the knife was stabbed through the blood-stained coat, which was only used after Mukuro was dead. And he couldn't have disguised it with another stab because the Monokuma file clearly states that it's only one stab wound. So the knife was used as camouflage as well, along with the explosion caused by Monokuma bomb to cover up what really happened. Eyes are on Kyoko again, but Makoto's going up to bat for her by explaining that we need to look into how Mukuro was actually killed, which was a blow to the back of the head. The weapon that was used was a titanium arrows. But not just one, no, that wad of blood-stained duct tape was used to bundle all of them together and then used to hit Mukuro on the back of the head. Because the key that was used to open the locker was in Kyoko's room, the blame shifts to her again. Makoto starts to feel like something's wrong and asks Kyoko what she was doing in his room last night. She says she was just protecting him. As everyone is still adamant that she's the killer, Kyoko still denies it. Mainly because she wouldn't be able to leave the wooden key in her room because Byakuya had the key to her room. So here's where we get to an interesting part of the trial. Makoto knows that Kyoko's lying because she has Monokuma's skeleton key. But this makes Makoto wonder, how could she slip up like that? Knowing Kyoko, it's obviously for a purpose. But is it to save her own skin, or is it to do something that exposes the mastermind? I mean, we know that Kyoko wouldn't kill anyone, but would she? It could be part of the mastermind's trap, though. Well, you actually have the option to go after Kyoko's contradiction, ignore it, or just run away. The running away option doesn't do anything, though, so let's see what happens when you choose to pursue the lie. Makoto lets everyone know about the skeleton key. After that, Kyoko gives up. She still doesn't admit to killing Mukuro, but simply admits to losing to the mastermind. Makoto begins to wonder if he made the wrong call, but then Monokuma alerts everyone that time's up. They all vote and Kyoko is chosen as the blackened, and Monokuma tells them that they were right, but Makoto is still feeling off. But before he can do anything... So yeah, she's gone. Makoto explains how it was their last class trial and that everyone finally found peace inside the school. And... Huh? So, I guess they did find happiness, but at what cost? And on that note, why is Byakuya holding a picture of Toko? What happened to her? And there's kids that all look like the guys, and Hina's just... oh god.
No! This isn't right!
So it turns out the whole thing was a dream, and Makoto was just staring off into space, wondering what would happen if he decided to point out Kyoko's lie.
So I ended up picking this route the first time around, and I think this counts as one of the few times in a video game where I'm playing it, nothing's chasing me, and yet I am still panicking the entire time.
So let's just ignore Kyoko's lie and see what happens now. They start arguing over who it could have been when Byakuya proposes a theory. Someone had the locker key on them and pretended to find it in Kyoko's room. When eyes turn to Makoto again, he starts to point out how strange the whole trial is. You know, how someone they didn't even know existed turned up dead, and now they're in a trial. Before he can explain himself further, Monokuma alerts everyone that time's up. Makoto starts to panic as voting time starts.
Wait, but in the other ending, Kyoko was the guilty one, so... Huh?
Everyone apologizes to Makoto as he is sent, rather quickly I might add, to his punishment. Wait, so hold on, are they actually gonna kill off the protagonist? What the f is going on? Wait, hold on. This isn't right. I demand an explanation. Wait, huh?
You Monokuma!
Oh, wow. Okay, he's just falling down now. Anyway, back in the trial room, Monokuma's just as surprised as everyone else and claims that Alter Ego must have planted a virus when he invaded the network. Monokuma does brush it off, though. Instead of getting crushed like Monokuma planned, Makoto's basically just gonna waste away inside of a garbage pit. Monokuma then leaves, leaving the others to turn to Kyoko and wonder what the hell is going on. She says that everyone will understand soon enough, especially now that it's actually the mastermind that's trapped. Later, inside the garbage pit, Makoto wakes up. How he survived the fall, I don't quite know.
Then again, I have heard stories where skydivers have survived parachute malfunctions, but still you'd think he'd have at least a few broken bones or something.
Ignoring the basic principles of physics, Makoto decides to look for a way out of there. The only way out seems to be a door that's locked. Putting that on hold for now, he decides to look for food and water. Unfortunately, all the food's rotten and he's really unsure which liquids he could even drink. So instead, he decides to sleep.
Look at you. You're down on your luck and you just decide to sleep it off. What you think a solution to all of your problems is just gonna come falling out of the sky? Oh, hey.
Kyoko shows up complete with bread and water, which Makoto happily consumes. When he asks why Kyoko came down to help him, she says it's to atone, since he backed her up in the trial, but she didn't back him up. But she does claim that the reason she needed to survive was that she needed to do what she was sent to the school for in the first place. However, she couldn't remember what that was until just recently. When she, like Makoto and the others, fainted when she first entered, she woke up having lost her memory and believes it was a deliberate move by the mastermind. Possibly because her memories are connected to the mystery of the school and the mastermind themselves. She worked on investigating those things alone because if she asked everyone else, the mastermind would have noticed right away, and then there's also the chance of one of the others being the mastermind as well. The reason she's been asking Makoto for help is because she believed he was the least likely to be the mastermind. While she hasn't fully recovered her memories just yet, she did recall her ultimate talent.
That being the ultimate detective. Yeah, I wasn't that surprised either.
And she also remembered the reason why she had to be at the school. To find the headmaster. Or, more specifically, her father.
That, however, was a surprise to me.
This explains why Kyoko was visibly shaken when Alter Ego mentioned the headmaster back in Chapter 4. Turns out, Kyoko and her dad were separated when she was a child, and she came to this school to find him. She also lets Makoto know that when she said that the headmaster was not the mastermind, she was not defending him by any means. She was actually basing it off of what she found in the headmaster's room. What did she find in there? A mess. Everything was flung everywhere so much that the only conclusion that Kyoko reached was that whoever did it had no idea where everything was. Which if the headmaster was the mastermind, he would kinda know where everything was there since it's the headmaster's room. Kyoko found a map that laid out Hope's Peak, and that's where she found out about the second floor dorms. She believes that they were used for faculty members. When she was there, she recalled her talent and purpose for being at the school, and also realized that what's happening at the school is far worse than they had thought. But he needs to see it for himself because even she can't quite explain it. Makoto then brings up Mukuro. Kyoko reiterates that she did not kill Mukuro, and she knows Makoto didn't either. She does believe that the mastermind is directly involved with this case, though. In fact, she believes that the whole point of this case was to get her killed due to her stealing the key and Mukuro's profile.
I could definitely believe that. Monokuma's pretty petty when it comes to that sort of thing.
The mastermind knows they have to follow school regulations as well, so they couldn't directly harm Kyoko. What they did was set up a sham trial. Kyoko then points out that Makoto was almost the victim. The masked man that appeared in the middle of the night really was set out to kill Makoto. Kyoko intervened at the last second, thankfully. She believes that the mastermind was the one that killed that masked assailant, or I guess Mukuro. She also believes that she's very close to figuring out who the mastermind's identity is. The other ultimate despair.
Great! There's another one!
There's two of them!
Already used you in a different video! Get out of here! Kyoko also believes that the ultimate despair, both Mukuro and whoever the mastermind is the one responsible not just for everything that's happened so far, but also for the tragedy that happened a year ago. On that startling revelation, we close Chapter 5. At least we have the same amount of students as last time. Anyway, this chapter set up our hero's inevitable confrontation with the mastermind, meaning that this next chapter is going to be the last one. Be sure to like and comment to get that algorithm moving along, and be sure to subscribe so you can see how the last chapter plays out. Hope to see you there. Peace.